Everybody, this is Pramod Nair of the Department of English, the University of Hyderabad, and in our module on posthumanism, we continue with the exploration of the various genealogies that have made up the school of thought which we now identify as critical posthumanism, which, as you know, has been distinguished very early in our lectures and discussions from the popular posthumanism that marks, say, popular culture, including films, TV serials, thrillers, and others. In our discussion of critical posthumanism and its genealogies, today we focus on human-animal studies. Let's reiterate some of these things which have occurred before in our conversation. One, critical posthumanism begins by questioning the human-animal divide as to whether there is a very real distinction or whether it is a socially constructed distinction between humans and the non-human, or the human animal and the non-human animal. In terms of etymology, as in the root of the word, animal comes from anima, which actually means the soul, or it means the animating principle of life. Now, this is a good starting point for the posthumanist to ask, when all living creatures, plants or animals, or amoebae and coconut trees and humans and mammals and worms, when all of these forms of life have this anima, this soul, this animating principle called the soul, then how is it that we can argue that some life forms are higher or better than others? Which means to say, the critical posthumanists have two fundamental problems with this binary of the human and the animal. How have humans positioned themselves as distinct from animals and superior to animals when both humans and animals possess this anima, this vital force of life? So, on what grounds do we declare ourselves distinct from animals or superior to animals? Which means that where traditional humanism, and we have explored this particular genealogy in considerable detail, if you might just want to recall that. So traditional humanism has always seen the non-human as the natural other within quotes and with a capital O, of the human, which is to say that for the critical posthumanist, traditional humanism has constructed a hierarchy where the non-human creature, the non-human critter, is the other of the human, and it has made the argument that this other is in the natural order of things. For the critical posthumanist, it's not natural. It is what humans have constructed in terms of us and them, we and they. So we, the humans, they, the animals or plants or whatever it might be. Which means that this human-animal divide, the human-animal binary, is something the humans have constructed for various reasons. And this is the traditional humanist notion that the critical posthumanists are upset by. The human defines what counts as human qualities and animal qualities. So when we say, for example, humans have language, other creatures don't. More and more animal behavior studies, plant studies demonstrate that animals and plants also have a form of language. Animals communicate very effectively, in fact, and now the argument and the evidence goes to show that even plants communicate. For instance, trees communicate, and when there is a certain predatorial presence at the front of the forest, the rear of the forest also begins to understand this because there is some form of transmission, some kind of communication that takes place. The science of biosemiotics talks in considerable detail about the signs of life and the life of science, as a famous book by Jesper Hoffmeyer puts it, where other species also communicate. So language is not unique to humans. Then they argue, the traditional humanists argue, that humans are the only species, only form of life that have altruism, which now again ethologists and animal behavior specialists have argued is not the case, that animals also demonstrate such forms of altruism. So the point I'm trying to make is that humans determine what qualities are important and what are not. What qualities give a certain species a higher ranking in the hierarchy compared to others. So humans have said, oh, those creatures that possess language are at the top of the hierarchy, those who don't are much lower. But now, like I just said a few seconds ago, that other life forms also have communication skills, have forms of language. So, how is this more sophisticated? All right, arguably plants don't write Shakespeare's plays and they don't have poetry, but that is in our understanding of what poetry is. Which means to say, what we determine as language, what we determine as a quality of life is entirely a human construction. And it's on the basis of that we devised a hierarchy where human life comes at the very top and all other species come far, far below in a very clear hierarchy. This hierarchy of life forms, according to the critical humanists, has resulted in the exploitation of the lower forms of life by the higher forms of life. That those who are at the top order in the life chain believe that the lower order species are merely there to serve the upper levels. This results in what people are calling, after Carey Wolf's terminology, speciesism. Speciesism is the exploitation of one species by another based on that species location on the hierarchy, and that hierarchy is created by humans. So let's get this very right. Speciesism is something humans have created where all other forms of life are lower than, subordinated to the human, and enabling the humans to therefore exploit them, to take out a certain instrumentalization of species. That they will be there to serve our purposes. They will be there to cater to our needs. Speciesism enables then the construction of the human as the only rational creature among all life forms, because we define what we understand as rational. When we say that human beings are rational creatures, it depends on how we define what rationality is. So humans have defined rationality in a certain way. Humans have determined what rationality means and operates as, and we say, oh, plants aren't rational, animals aren't rational, the earthworm isn't rational, the eagle flying above us is not rational, because our notion of rationality is of a particular kind. Speciesism enables us to do this kind of classification. Speciesism also enables us to treat animals as objects. They are commodified. They exist as exotic creatures or as meats. They are not treated as creatures with rationality. They can be treated as knowable, and subject to the human gaze, by which I mean speciesism allows the human to make the argument that humans can know, can understand, classify and describe the non-human, because we are rational creatures. We can know them. So speciesism allows us to transform the animal into an object of scrutiny, an object of inquiry, an object of analysis, so that the other creatures are merely objects to our quote-unquote scientific rationality. What is it we do? We dissect them, we study them, we put them in specimen jars and keep them on shelves. We put them in a museum, we put them in a zoo. So the creature, the animal, becomes the object of scrutiny, becomes the object of scientific understanding and scientific experimentation. This is possible because, as you know, animals don't experiment on us, we experiment on them. We have taken it as our fundamental right, thanks to speciesism, that animals can be treated that way because we are higher. We are occupying the higher levels of life forms in that hierarchy. We might also see them through multiple kinds of lenses. For example, like I said, we can see them as open to exploitation, open to use. That would be a utilitarian perspective on animals, that we believe that animals exist to serve us, which is why the domestication of animals happens, that we needed animals to plow the fields, we needed animals to pull our carriages, we needed animals in war, which is why horses and elephants were employed. We needed creatures to determine whether the mines are safe or not when they started digging into the earth. So we sent in the canaries. In all cases, the examples I mentioned, the animal is a utilitarian object to be utilized, to be exploited. But it would also have sentimental attitudes towards creatures. Pets are a good example of this. What are pets? Pets are animals that have been taken into the family, into the household, into the home. And we have a certain sentimental attachment to it, which is why we refer to pets as, oh, our dog is just like a family member. The dog is not of the human family, of the human race, of the human species. We have sentimentalized the dog in a certain way so that the dog appears to fit in. And the minute we use the word animal, we assume that the animal has been categorized and the animal is a cross species because the animal does not respond to human language. Speciesism is a way of thinking that excludes or classifies the non-human in a certain way. But the bigger points made by critics like Rossi Braidotti, Carey Wolf, and several others is that the minute you construct the non-human as the excluded other, you enable the exclusion of some humans also as the other. In Braidotti's famous words, when you classify according to speciesism animals in a certain way, then that also excludes the non-white, the non-masculine, the non-normal, the non-young, the non-healthy, the disabled, the malformed or enhanced peoples. End of quote. That's Rossi Braidotti. So speciesism is dangerous because what is applied to the non-human can at some point be applied to the humans as well. We do know that genocidal language and genocidal acts begin by classifying a certain segment of the people as less than human. We know Hitler's famous statement that Jews are a form of life, but they are not human. This enabled them to be treated like vermin, like roaches. They can be crushed and beaten and pulverized and, of course, exterminated, which means to say that the humans categorized in this fashion through speciesism don't count, don't matter. They can be dealt with in any kind of way, like you would treat an animal. So the danger, as Braidotti and others have pointed out, is that speciesism can be expanded to include other forms. When, for example, in Nazi Germany, the rules determined that, say, for example, epileptics cannot be allowed to marry and have children, and the disabled will be treated as less than human, the subnormal, you are seeing speciesism in operation. It was first believed that you could target only a certain kind of people, the Jews, and then they said, why only the Jews? Why not other people who are malformed? So because the belief in the supremacy of the Aryan race said that those who don't fit the ideal of the beautiful Aryan body are less than Aryans. So they can be exterminated. They can be deleted, so to speak, from the database itself. So speciesism is an extraordinarily powerful and a wide-ranging ideological formation that enables such things to be directed at certain segments of people and certain segments of life forms. So critical posthumanism's questioning of this category of the animal, this category of the species, has resulted in 2 or 3 specific arguments. and in related domains. First, critical posthumanism is interested in the ability, the capacity of animals to experience pain and suffering, to possess their own consciousness. Critical posthumanism is interested in the animal's sense of their own mortality, because it was believed that only humans have a sense of their own mortality, of their own imminent death at some point in the future. But now scientists say that's not quite true, because the animals also possess, some species of animals also possess a very strong sense of their mortality. Finally, critical posthumanism also is interested in altruism, responsibility, communication, and other ethical aspects which we have always believed are only human, are exclusively human. Which means to say that when you talk about animals as though they are a strange form of life, we ignore common features with humans. For instance, that they experience pain, they possess consciousness, that they have a sense of their own mortality, that they also exhibit altruism, responsibility, and other ethical qualities. For people in literature and cultural studies and in literary and cultural theory, the rhetoric of animals, the discourse of animals, becomes very important, because this language of description determines how people see them, how people perceive them. Remember, description is not innocent. Description is not value neutral. Description constructs the object of the description in a way that it forces us to respond in a certain way, which is why we have melodrama, we have realism and other forms. So every time we depict the animal in a certain way, it determines how humanity will see them, how we will perceive them. So for people in literary and cultural theory and literary and cultural studies, how we produce knowledge about animals, whether we see them as pets, whether we see them as monsters, whether we see them as mere objects, is important, because it determines how we will see them, how humanity will see them. And this is absolutely crucial.